Hi, I'm Ashlee, and one of my favorite traditional meals to make at the holidays is homemade tamales. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any of our other holiday foods, and let's get started. A little known fact about me is that my grandma grew up in Mexico, so as a family, we actually make a lot of traditional Mexican foods. They're definitely a favorite of ours. And this tamale recipe is actually something that we make every year. My brother-in-law, me, and my sister, and our parents when they're in town. So it's definitely a favorite. I'm gonna share with you two different fillings that we make, and then the tamale recipe itself and how we put it together. Now, we do it assembly line. This is not a hard thing to do, but it's definitely time consuming, and so more hands, less work. This is a great thing to do as a family, and then you can all take a bunch home and enjoy it fresh or enjoy it later. So we're gonna start with our red pork filling. You want about 20 to 30 dried peppers. You want to de-stem and then de-seed all of these, and then add them to some water. Once you have them all in water, you want to put something down on top of it to hold them down into the water, and then we're going to let them soak until they're nice and soft. So it's been a couple hours and our chilies are all soaked and super soft. So now what you want to do is pull them out, kind of drain the water out of them a little bit, and put them inside your blender. You want to make sure that you maintain this chili water. We might use it a little bit later with this sauce. Now you want to add a medium onion. I just cut it into like eighths so it will blend a little bit easier. 6 cloves of garlics that have had the bottoms cut off and are smashed. Then 4 sprigs of thyme. About half a teaspoon of salt. If it's getting too thick and it's not grinding up very well, you can take some of the juice that we soaked the peppers in and pour some in, just not too much. And now it's nice and thick. So here we have 3 pounds of boneless pork shoulder, and we're gonna trim off the extra fat, and we're gonna cut it into 3-inch cubes. And then put all of the chunks into a plastic bag. And then pour this over our pork. Knead your pork into your marinade, and marinate for at least 3 hours. It is all done, and now we're going to just throw it in the crock pot. One of the other ingredients in this filling is some toasted bay leaves. So you just turn a pan on to high and add the dried bay leaves to that. And after they start to brown, flip them over. They are done. Now, I usually cook this mixture for 8 hours on low. I usually just do it the night before. We're gonna make tamales and then shred it in the morning and then just let them cool. They don't have to be warm to put into the tamales. The pork is done, and before we shred it, we actually wanna make sure that we pull out all 4 of those bay leaves. This should just fall apart. Just use 2 forks, unless you have one of those, meat puller aparter things. Those things are awesome, but I just use 2 forks. Now for the chicken filling, we're gonna cook the chicken and then shred it and then mix it in with the sauce. So there's a lot of different ways you can cook chicken. You can boil it, which is my least preferred method. Something about it just kind of turns me off. You can saute it or you can bake it. Those are the 2 that I always go with. Lately I've been on a baking kick, so that's what we're gonna do today. Baking your chicken is super simple. First thing you want to do is put it on a pan and drizzle it with some olive oil. And then we're going to add any seasonings that you want. I'm just going to salt and pepper. And then you want to flip it over and do the other side. Then we're gonna bake it at 400 for about 20 minutes and then bring it down to 350 for any remaining time. I like to use a meat thermometer to make sure that I don't overcook it. While the chicken is cooking, we're gonna prepare the rest of the filling. So I have all of these tomatillos, and they have this outer skin on them, and what you wanna do is unwrap the outer skin, and I twist it off to get the top off. And you want to do that for about 2.5 pounds. Now, this outer skin gets sticky and tacky, and if you touch your eyes with it, it could burn. So make sure that you wash your hands afterwards. And if you're super sensitive to stuff like this, which I'm not, but if you are, you can, of course, wear gloves. So once you have them peeled, what we want to do next is cut them in half through the center. And we're going to place them on a baking tray, and we're going to put them in the oven and broil them. And that's how you roast tomatillos. I flipped them over and broiled both sides so they got roasted everywhere. And now it's time to toss them into our blender. And then I usually roast my own peppers, but I happen to have a can of roasted peppers in my fridge, so I just used that. I have some garlic that I've skinned and crushed. And then I have a bunch of cilantro. And then a small handful of salt, probably about a teaspoon. And then blend it all together. Stir it together with your shredded chicken breasts. This is ready to be filling. Oh, this one's so good. Now we're gonna make the masa, and this is the dough that holds the filling in, and you know, it's the best part. It's made out of corn. You can buy it in most of your local grocery stores. You might have to go to a specialty store if you live someplace where maybe they don't have a lot of Mexican food options. So we're gonna start with 2 cups of the masa flour. We're gonna add some salt and some baking powder, and then we're gonna stir it. And we're just using our hands for this one. If you have an aversion to using your hands, you're gonna kind of struggle with this because it really is all about the texture to get the dough perfect. And we're gonna add our chicken broth and mix it in. And one of the things you want to do before you start this, before you get your hands all in here and dirty, is you want to take the lard that you're using and whip it up really good. You don't just want to measure the lard out from the block that you buy it in. You want to whip it so it's light and fluffy. I just use my electric beaters and beat it up, and you can see how nice and soft and pretty that looks. Now we're going to add that whipped lard, and the recipe calls for 2/3, so I've measured that out, but I'm actually going to just start with about half of it. Mix it in, and then we're just gonna add little by little until the texture is right. And that's what I meant by you need to use your hands in this. It really comes down to the texture. Too little and it's gonna be a little bit too dry and it's gonna crack. Too much and it's gonna be a little bit difficult to flatten out and work with and to make your tamales. So this is usually my sister's job, but she doesn't wanna be in the video with me because she's lame. So you really want the texture to be more like Play-Doh. And that's when you're gonna feel it, kind of like a grainy Play-Doh. Stop. The reason that you wanna go slow as you're adding the lard is that if you over add and you need to dry it out a little bit more, if you add any of the masa later, it'll actually end up much grainier, and this is nice and smooth. And so a great way to test it is to take some, make your ball, so you can kind of feel how it balls up, and then flatten it out. And see how it flattens. If it's cracking, it's a little bit too dry. If it's a little bit too sticky, it might be a little bit too wet. So this feels right. Hopefully you can see that amazing texture. You want to get a paper towel and get it wet and then wring it out. And you can keep that over the dough to keep it from drying out so that the texture is not changing as you work all of your dough balls and flatten them and everything else. So to get your corn husks pliable so that you can use them and wrap up your tamales, you want to put them in a big bowl of water and leave them there for, you know, a good 15-20 minutes, and put something heavy on top to hold them down so that they stay weighed down. You want to take a nice clean towel and dry off your corn husk, but you can see now you can fold it and it's nice and pliable. So we're going to take our dough ball that we've rolled, and this is a tortilla press that I like to use, and this is the plastic bag that I want to say is about 3 or 4 years old that we use every year for making this. There's something about them aging and being used and folded, and it just works out better. If you're working with a new one, you might take a couple tries to not have all of us stick together. So put your ball in the center of the press, the lid over. Now, a lot of people just are gonna go straight down with your tortilla press, but we like to kind of do just a little bit and then turn it, because you can see this side is much thinner than this side. And so if you want it nice and even, I do a 3-point turn here. And press. Now it's nice and flat and the perfect thickness. You're gonna take your corn husk and put it over your flattened masa, flip it inside and peel it away. There we go. Now I have the perfect little medium to add my filling. I wanna say that's like 2.5 tablespoons. All right, so we're gonna flip it over on one side and flip it over on the other side. Let's kind of press it together using the corn husks, not your fingers. Then I'm gonna pinch the bottom together. Pinch, pinch, pinch. Then I wrap the husk, fold the bottom. They come down inside here, press that down, and then pinch that together too. And then just repeat over and over and over and over again. Now what we usually do is my mom dries off the husks, my sister makes the balls, I flatten it out, and then my brother-in-law fills it and wraps it. And it actually doesn't take too much time at all. It definitely works better with more people. All right, so now that you've had your tamales all made, it's time to put them in your pot. Now this is an official tamale pot that I borrowed from my brother-in-law. I don't actually have one for myself. I just use a steamer. So you want a little bit of water in the bottom. You don't want your tamales to touch the water, so that's why you want to use a steamer basket or something like that. And you want to make sure that as you fill them up, you build it kind of log style. You don't want to put them this way like they might be in the pictures all snug together. It will take way too long to cook that way. So by doing it this way, by stacking them off kilter, kind of like you're building a log cabin, you'll get a nice even cook. It'll cook a lot faster and you'll be much happier with the results. So you can even fill this all the way to the top with just a nice little hole in the center. Now, because this is a official pot, it has a little hole right here. And what that does is that helps the steam escape. If you don't have an official tamale pot like I don't, what I usually do with my own pot is I get a clean rag, I get it all damp. I just rub my hands a bunch of times and dampen it up, and then I cover it over the top so that the steam is mostly trapped inside, but it's a little bit is still escaping so you don't make it too moist. It's finished. I hope that you can see how much fun this is to make. Seriously, it is so delicious, but like I said, it is very time consuming and there's a reason that we only do this once or twice a year. I'm trying to convince my brother-in-law that we need to have a Christmas in June and have a whole nother tamale session in the summer as well, just because they are so, so good. So we always pair our tamales with my grandmother's refried bean recipe, and there'll be a link to that down below. So another one of our favorite things to do is to serve the green with my homemade pickled creamy jalapeno dip. Mwah. That recipe is also on the blog and it's totally worth it. As you can see, we have a nice even coating of the masa, and we have a lot of this great filling, and it's nice and moist. The texture is perfect. So let's give it a try. Now, the red pork is a really nice recipe. It has some nice flavors. It's not too spicy, although when you're putting it all together, you're gonna think, oh, this is gonna be so spicy. It's really not. It's actually quite mild. This is one of those recipes that I'm actually constantly changing. It's still not perfect in my mind. So if any of you have a great red pork tamale filling recipe, please let me know about it. I would love to tweak this and just get it to perfection, because the chicken is perfection. Oh, so good. Look how amazing that looks. So this green chicken is perfect. In fact, a lot of years we don't even bother with the red pork filling and we just go straight for the green and chicken. Oh, the tomatillos, it's so good. Now you can eat, tamale beans. One of my favorite things to do is actually take your bite of tamale and get a big bunch of the beans with it. Hot. A big bite. Man, I think if I was dying, this would be my final meal. So in the comment box down below, let me know what your favorite family traditional meal is. Something that you grew up with, or maybe something that you've developed as an adult that has just become a family favorite that you just couldn't go the year without making at least once. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss anything coming up. We're about to start a whole new year, and I would love to hear what more cakes and recipes you want to see here on the channel. Happy holidays, Happy New Year, and thanks for watching. I can always put this in the end of my video.